So I wanted to hop on today, and I just felt impressed by the Lord to share a little bit of my story with you, because I was on a Skype call with my friend Jordan a few weeks ago, new friend Jordan, and he was asking me about my story, and I just shared a little bit, and he was just like, wow. And I thought, I never thought that my story was really wow until he said that. So, I don't know. We'll see. It's just story time. Happy Sunday. We're going to share some stories. So, I was born at a young age. I think that's a Matt Tommy joke. About people starting their long testimonies with like, way back when I was born at a young age. But seriously, when I was a kid, I went, like, my parents were athletes, and so they had all of us in, like, sports. We had to play t-ball, and we had to play softball, and I was not very good at it. And after making me try, they relented and let me do dance classes and drama classes instead. And so I took to performing arts, and I have this vivid memory of being on the front porch with my dad when I was, about 7 or 8 years old, maybe 9, but I think I was about 8. And if you've never heard me talk about my dad, he's one of my favorite people in the world. But my parents, like, raised us to always just, like, be whoever we wanted to be. Like, we had so much freedom. And so even though they were athletes and wanted us to play sports, and they knew that team sports are good for you, and they still had me do other group things, they also knew that, like, saw pretty quickly, I'm not an athlete. Like, what can we do instead? And so my parents were my biggest champions, but on the porch with my dad, he was asking me, like, what do you want to do with your life? I was 8. He said, what do you want to be? And just encouraging me that you can be anything you want to be. And so I said, well, I really like these dance classes. I really like music, and I really like drama. Maybe one day, like, I want to be, I don't know, maybe it probably said something like rock star. Like, I was pretty into MTV. It was new. This was the 80s. And so MTV still played music videos. And I remember watching MTV when I was a kid and thinking, like, I want to be Madonna. I want to be Janet Jackson. And I want to be, Belinda Carlisle and the Go-Go's and the Bangles and, like, all these, like, girl, pop rock stars. Like, and Jem and the Holograms. Jem was my hero. And, along with Shira. So he said, well, we can just, like, when you get older, you can go to Juilliard. And he started telling me about Juilliard, this performing arts school that was, like, top tier. And just started dreaming with me when I was 8. And then I was in a school play, and I had a duet with another girl. And after the school play, this little boy in my class, bless his heart, said, I couldn't hear you singing. And I took it the wrong way. And instead of, like, it was just an innocent comment, but it hit my heart in a funny way, and it opened the door for the enemy to start speaking to me that I don't have a voice, and that I shouldn't sing, and that I won't be heard, and I shouldn't be heard. And they were just lies, but it hit me in a really, like, deep way that stuck with me. And so I started to abandon my dreams of Juilliard and say, no, I want to be a teacher instead, and started pursuing this dream of being a teacher. And so fast forward to, like, middle school and high school, I was in church choir, and I think I was in middle school choir, and I tried out for a solo, and I didn't make it. And then I tried out again, and I didn't make it. And again, it just reinforced the lie that was there, that I'm never, like, that I'm not good, I don't have a good voice, and I shouldn't be heard. And it just shut me down and pushed that voice, like, further and deeper inside. And but I still loved music, and I still kept singing in my car and in the shower. And when I was in middle school, I fell in love with Jesus and started listening to Christian music and worship music, and saw the girls on the worship team, and like there was this like almost envy in my heart. It was a desire. It wasn't really envy, but it was a desire in my heart that I want to do that, but I never felt good enough. So there was this battle with desire in my heart, but the thoughts in my head weren't lining up. And my thoughts were trumping my heart at that point in my life. And so I just continued to worship in private and kept it all inside. And so I went to college, and I went to a Christian college, studied youth ministry, and worked at a radio station. And I was a groupie for a bunch of bands and music groups. All my friends were singers and musicians. Not all, a lot of my friends were singers and musicians. And I would go to all their shows and support them and fangirl. And but then I was also at the radio station, and it was part of my job to go and like meet the bands and interview them, and la-di-da. And still there was this desire that I pushed way down, and because I didn't think I was good enough. And there was even this campfire moment when one of the other students asked me if I would like lead some songs at the campfire, and we were all going to worship together, and I said no because I didn't think I was good enough. And so like doors opened, and I refused to walk through because of that lie that had been planted in me since childhood. And then one day in college, I was working at Chick-fil-A, and I was in the drive-thru, and I love Chick-fil-A. Do y'all love Chick-fil-A? I worked at Chick-fil-A much of high school, and then summers when I was in college, I would come home and work at Chick-fil-A in the summertime. And the Chick-fil-A I worked at when I was in college, the operator, my boss, was amazing. Monty Valdez is not just an employer, he's like a dad and a brother. And he was, for me, like his kids were close to my age, and so he was like another father to me, and just set this atmosphere in the store. It was amazing. Love Monty. I don't even know if he knows this story actually, but I was in the drive-thru, and like we were busting cars out. It was this competition, just like we had to keep the cars moving because it was lunchtime. And so I was in the window, and I was taking this woman's money and giving her her food. And while we're having this very quick exchange, like 30-second exchange, she looks at me and she said, "Hey, do you sing?" And I just smiling, laughing, my pleasure, personality. I said, "Yeah, I sing in the car and in the shower, that's it." And she looked at me like dead in the face, and she said, "The Lord says that you have a voice and you're supposed to belt it out." And then she took her food and she left. I don't know her name. I'd never seen her again in my life. I don't know who she is. But in that moment, it spoke to that desire that had been buried so deep that I had pushed down, and I knew it was there. And I was like actively suppressing it. And in that moment, it was like she gave me permission to pursue my desire. And so when she said that the Lord says to belt it out, I turned to the person next to me. I said, "I need to take a break." And I grabbed the like window washing stuff, and I just went and washed windows and cried. I didn't even, like, I was still working. That was my work ethic. And so I fell apart on the outside because I felt exposed and seen and known. And so I took that word and pondered it in my heart, and didn't really talk about it to many people because I was still like ashamed and thinking I wasn't good enough. And yeah, we entertain angels. She was, when I get to heaven, I'm going to go find her. I'm going to track her down and say, "Jesus, where's the Chick-fil-A woman?" So, so at the end of the summer, I went back to school, and one of my friends was a music major, and for one of her class projects, she had to teach voice lessons, private lessons to somebody. And so I said, I'll do it. I'll help you out. Meanwhile, I'm like, I need to get better at this if I'm really going to do what God's telling me to do. So I took these, oh, hey, my sister's watching. Hey, Chris. So I took these private lessons with my friend Jill, and so she did some vocal coaching with me, and gave me the confidence to actually sing, and encouraged me. And I had to sing in front of her professor and her at the end of these voice lessons. And so I was still feeling shy and shut down, but a little more built up than I was before. And it gave me some tools to start working on my voice to get confident. So that was my senior year. Worked through all this, graduated from college, and right before graduation, because I'd been working in radio, I was considering moving to Nashville. And then my mentor called me and said she was moving to Asheville to help start a new church. Got off the phone and said, well, I want to do that. I want to go with her. God, I want to go. And then a week later, she invited me. So I abandoned Nashville, moved to Asheville, drove up to meet the pastor and his wife, the pastors for this church, this new church that I'm going to help out with, and I'd never met them before. So I went up to meet them and stayed with them, and we were sitting down, we'd gone out for dinner, and we had come back, and we were sitting down at their table and having a cup of tea, and they were just asking questions to get to know me. And they said, so what do you feel like God's called you to? What do you want to do with your life? And my pat answer up until that point had always been, God's called me in a youth ministry. I want to work with students and young people. And instead of saying that, out of my mouth came, I want to be a worship leader. And I shocked myself because I'd never said that out loud to anybody. And I didn't even know how to do that or what to do. I don't play an instrument. I barely sing. It's just, I love to worship. And there was that one woman in the Chick-fil-A drive-thru. And so at that point on, Sam Fine, the pastor, he is one of those people that will just be the wind in your sails. And so he got me on a worship team within months. I was leading worship at a summer camp. So it was student ministry. I was a counselor to youth camp, but then he hooked me up with the worship leader there, and I was on my first worship team. It was probably 2 or 3 months after we had talked about this. And so at that point, he was so instrumental in helping get me on teams and encouraging worship leaders to call me. And I started developing my prophetic voice and connected with people that helped me write songs, and at that church sang the first songs that I'd ever written in front of a congregation, and then moved to South Carolina, where we live now, and connected with other songwriters and people that helped me produce my first album and are launching my second album, and wonderful co-writers that are helping me stretch in my gift. And so God's brought me on this journey from being shut down to being healed and set free. And that instrumental moment was when a random woman in a Chick-fil-A drive-thru just heard from the Lord and was brave enough to say it out loud. And then I took that, and I didn't quit, and I didn't give up, and I kept pushing through, and I kept getting better, and I kept coming back to what God said. And I've learned since then that God puts dreams in our hearts when we delight in Him. All we have to do is delight in the Lord and trust that the desires that are there are His. And I thought it was this vain, unattainable dream, when really it was His heart's desire in me the whole time. So now I'm just doing the next right thing. So if you're watching, I would love to know, what's your next right thing? What's the big dream in your heart that might seem vain or unattainable, or might be buried deep inside? that you might not think you're good enough for or worthy of, like, tell me. I want to know. And maybe you're the one to spark that dream in someone else. If you see it in somebody, tell them that, like, you're good at this. I think you should go for it. So let's go be encouragers and exhorters and believe in the dreams that God's put in us, because you're worth it. You're awesome. And if God's put it in you, he's going to make a way to make it happen.